fair that I should have to worry for my child's safety in public places where they're doing normal children fun things. So my question to you, Senator, is do you support universal background checks? If you do not, will you please consider supporting universal background checks as well as other common sense gun legislation?
Thank you, I will, and thank you for your involvement and thank you for your commitment. It's people like you that are important, I think, in the process. First of all, obviously, we need to do whatever is necessary in keeping with the Constitution of the United States to prevent guns from falling into the hands of criminals, number one, and number two, people who are mentally unstable from having access to guns. Now, a lot of people, as was signed there, ban assault weapons. You know where the most murders in America are taking place today? In a city called Chicago. Those murders are not taking place with assault weapons. It's handguns. It's handguns that are being used. The country in the world that has one of the most stringent gun laws and restrictions on the use of guns and weapons is a country called Norway. I'm sure you know that a deranged individual slaughtered a countless number of young people. So to somehow assume that by banning assault weapons would somehow affect events in Chicago simply is not substantiated by the facts. Now, Mr. Loeffner down in Tucson passed a background check. He passed a background check, even though he was thrown out of Pima Community College and had a record, a record that should have disqualified him. There's a group of senators working together, and I've been talking to them. Senator Manchin of West Virginia, Senator Coburn of Oklahoma, who's a strong conservative, and some others who are working, Senator Schumer. We are working together to try to come up with a package that would prevent guns from falling into the hands of criminals, but at the same time preserving our Second Amendment rights. I thank you. We'll be glad to have your recommendations and your thoughts and your ideas. But to somehow assume that banning assault weapons is somehow going to affect events in the street in Chicago is simply wrong. And finally, could I say, there's still never been justice meted out for the Fast and Furious, which had guns that went down to Mexico and fell into the hands of drug cartels, which resulted in the murder of Brian Terry. So I hope that we will also resolve that. Now your response. Go ahead.
I asked you specifically, do you support universal background checks?
Again, it depends on what kind of a check. It depends on how it's administered. It depends on who it's administered to. Of course I support background checks, but I think it depends on exactly how we do it. They found last year, I had a chart here about last year there were some 8,000 people who failed criminal background checks. You know how many were prosecuted? 44. Why don't we have, when we find someone who is criminal and funds a background check, why don't we prosecute them rather than 44 out of 8,000? That's another thing I hope that you will support. Okay? All right. I think I've answered as much as I can. Yes, ma'am.
Stand up with me. Thanks, Senator McCain. As a fellow cancer survivor, I'm a 31-year-old cancer survivor, and this is my friend Russ, who is a 3-time cancer survivor. Thank you. I am sure that you are as concerned as we are about the potential cuts to cancer research and prevention programs. So we're curious if you'll help to commit to preventing cuts, knowing that if the funding stops, there will be promising cancer research left on the table.
I absolutely will, and one of the problem, I think all of us here would agree that we could reduce and eliminate wasteful and unnecessary spending in government. But when you do it across the board, I don't know if there's anyone here that wants to cut funding for cancer research. So when you cut across the board, you throw out the baby with the bathwater. I can find you tomorrow literally hundreds of millions of dollars in savings in defense spending, and I've been after them for years. The cost overruns of the F-35, by the way, is a great example. but across the board is an act of cowardice, because we're going to be unable to prevent what you all, thank God, have been able to live through. Thank you for your advocacy, and I hope we will contact all of our members of Congress to say, look, you want to cut spending? We're all for it. That's what I want. I'm an advocate of it. But to cut spending for cancer research is damned foolish. It's not, it's worse than foolish. So thank you. Do you want to follow up?
No, just I wanted to thank you, and again, we will be there to speak with our members of Congress. So we'll see you in September. Thanks.
All right, good. There's a lady all the way in the back there, right there, because she's had to stand. We will answer her. Yes, ma'am.
My concern is about gun control, and I feel like part of the problem is that the people who own guns are not being responsible for them, and there should be some kind of financial ramifications when those weapons are used to harm other people, whether they are the ones who used it or not. Can you please speak to that?
Well, I think obviously everyone who owns a gun has a responsibility for that gun. And obviously they should take responsibility for that weapon.
What about laws, though, to protect the people, such as the mother of the...
We already do have some laws that provide for that, and if you need if you think we need strengthening of those laws to make sure that that doesn't happen, I'd be more than happy to hear your recommendations and ideas on that. I'd be more than happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and insurance should be carried on those weapons as well to protect people.
Let me just say, I thank you for your view and I appreciate it. Could I say that what has been highlighted here is we all share a common goal. We all share a common goal. We don't want guns to fall into the hands of criminals, and we don't want people who are mentally ill to have those weapons. It seems to me we need a national dialogue with the input of this young, fine woman there and you and others that feel passionately about this. There are others in this room who feel passionately about their constitutional Second Amendment rights as well. Yes. So what we need to have is a continued national conversation on this issue, and I'm encouraged to know that people on both sides of this issue in the United States Senate are having serious conversations and negotiations. I'm not intimately involved in it. I'm sort of on the outside encouraging them and talking to them. But these individuals, I am hopeful and pray that we can come up with something that would address a situation that we all agree is not acceptable in America. And thank you. Yes, ma'am.